There we go. Just putting in a title while we wait. Want to get here a couple minutes early. So while I'm waiting, I'm just going to play with this. There, and we have a subject. Okay, and it's 7 o'clock. So we're going to talk about scrubbing claims. And really this applies to any software package. It doesn't need to be Eyefinity. The process of scrubbing claims is to go through the claims from the previous day one at a time and look them over for problems. Now, in a perfect world, or maybe it's not, the software would go through and watch for all of these problems for you. But most practice management systems don't, and the rules tend to be complicated and change on a fairly regular basis. And that's all requirements from the carriers. So I'm going to pop up real quick a little box that we can stick in some of the items that we scrub for. So first item I watch for is the length of the policy. So the policy ID, it tends to be a fixed length for each carrier. And I find it's best to write down the rules on a sheet for each carrier. Then you run through the claims from the previous day by carrier and look for all of these different items. So first one I look for is policy length. You see a lot of things like lookup, need to find, 0000. These are not going to fly. Now eventually, of course, the claim would go to the carrier. The carrier would find out it's junk and send it back to you. Now, you can't really check whether the policy number is valid or not. If you scan in your eligibility information, which is a great idea, you could double check that, but it is time consuming. So the quick and easy method is I look for the length of the policy number. All right, along that line, I also take a look at the length of the authorization number. That's another easy, quick test. On either of these, typo errors will tend to show up. So if the expected policy length is 9 numbers long and it's instead 10, they probably did a double entry on a number. Or if it's 8, they left one out. So you catch a lot of errors doing this. And same for authorization. The next item I look for when going through the claims is for vision plans that require a refraction. So VSP is a good example. that requires the refraction to be entered. Some people decide to do refraction all the time for every plan. That's fine. Others normally do just the exam fee and then separate the refraction for the plans that require it. All right, the next one's a biggie. Is the exam linked to an appropriate diagnosis? So for vision-only plans, you need to make sure it is linked to a refractive diagnosis. Otherwise, it's going to get rejected. With a medical plan, such as Medicare, you're looking for the opposite. You want to see a medical diagnosis linked to the exam. Now in Eyefinity, you can look on the main page to see what diagnosis it's linked to. All you have to do is hover over the procedure in the claim, and it will show you the diagnosis. And you real quickly memorize the refractive ones, or you can make a nice list of them. And again, it helps to make a page per carrier and write down the carrier rules. All right, another fun one is our friends at Spectera. So Spectera, as far as I'm aware, is somewhat unique in having a formulary and modifiers to go with that formulary. So when doing a fitting, based on what they were fit with on the day of the exam, you have to add the appropriate modifier. And they have a list of the ones that are covered and non-covered. Some of them get a CD modifier, some of them get a CM modifier, and their list will show that. And this is just for the fitting itself. The next one I watch for when scrubbing is for the optos or fundus procedure. A lot of the carriers require either using a different code or putting in a modifier for the optos. So this is another good thing to check for. Now, Eyefinity can do some of the translations and modifiers for you, but the point of scrubbing is to watch for all of this. So I have set up an Eyefinity where it is adding some of these modifiers, but then I have technicians who are trying to be helpful and replace that modifier with the one they feel is correct. So I find I need to double check all of these modifiers anyway. Now, next one probably only comes up in certain circumstances, but a good example is for some of the practices I work with, they are out of network for VSP, yet the system has it marked for electronic transmission of the claim, but it won't work for out of network. So you have to manually print the HCFAs out. So I make sure I put a reminder of which claims can go electronically and which ones I need a HCFA for. My personal method is, as I'm going through, when I hit a claim that needs to go on paper, I actually print the HCFA right then and there and then move on to the next one. I just find that method works better for me. It was also pushed by having one group that for some reason mass print of HCFAs never seemed to work. The other thing is with the VSP, it won't work at all. So that's my solution on that. Next one I look for is the tab character in the policy. The only way I found to check this, I actually have an internal tool we use that checks claims for us, that helps scrub. Basically, it does this checklist of things we need to do, and one of the things it does is look in the policy to make sure there's no embedded hidden characters. The one I keep running into is tab. For some reason, the tab key is allowed to be embedded into the policy. And it seems to happen when they copy and then paste, paste the policy number into the field. And then the tab gets embedded, and if you're sending it electronically, then that's garbaging the policy and you get a denied claim. It stands out when you go into the claim and edit it. Viewing, it looks perfectly fine. When you edit the claim and go to the policy number, you'll notice there's a 9 in front of the policy. And that is actually the tab key where it got embedded. And you just need to remove it. Let's see, product referring. So the other one that I run into is, for a couple carriers, they require you to have the referring doctor when doing contact lens or glasses sale. So for those particular carriers, I just mark to make sure the referring doctor is in there. Usually it's the examining doctor. Last one is more complicated for Medicare, and that's a post-op. So right now, clients I work with, what they do is they put in the procedure codes, and then I add the modifiers for the post-op and look at the records they have and alter the dates of service to the appropriate eyes, and then put in the assumed and release dates into the record. So it's a bit of a manual process, but they're not doing a lot to straight Medicare. So that is pretty much my list of scrubs. So if anybody has additional scrubs they want to add, please add notes, send me messages, whatever you would like. I am available at, if emailing is easiest, put it into the notes down in the YouTube, whatever works for you to communicate. So I see one person's looking in on me. Feel free to chat, so at least I know the chat works. I'm gonna go check it out myself. All right, so if nobody has anything to add, feel free to chat, so at least I know the chat works. Oh, there we go, just as a test. Ah, there we go. Thank you, Scarlett. Glad to know you're alive out there. So tell me, do you scrub the claims yourself as well? And one thing I have to get used to on the YouTube is I have no idea how much lag this thing gives us. Yep, that's exactly what I was saying. It does tend to have a lag between the two of them. It does make it more interesting. Okay, great. So there's different approaches to how you want to handle claims. So you can simply let the claims come in, trust the front desk to have done everything, and send the claims out. Then if you're doing electronic, wow, that's a big lag. I might have to see what I can discover on that. I know you can actually set a lag setting on purpose, so I'll have to see. I'm going to do a test lag myself, so that's 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, 6,000. Yep, I got the same kind of a lag. Maybe that's in case you were going to say something nasty about me. I have time to stop it. I don't know. But so you can do two different approaches, really. You can do that kind of mud against the wall and let the claims come in, simply send them out to TriZetto or print the claims, and then wait for them to come back and deal with the problems. If 90% of your claims make it through that way, you may be better off doing that than scrubbing them. I like checking them out ahead of time, and that way I have a higher percentage of clean claims going out the door, especially on paper, because with paper it may be 30 days before you find out somebody put lookup as a policy number. So, differing approaches. So when you have a chance and the lag catches up, how long have you been working on the EPM system, and how long have you been doing claims in general? And I guess it could be worse than 7 seconds. I mean, if we ever got to Mars or something, there would be a bigger delay, I suspect. Oh, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button for me, too. That will be fun. Okay, so very new. So, okay, excellent. And I assume it's all vision claims for you as well? Yes. I need to find good fillers. Unfortunately, most of them are filled with like dad jokes, so Okay, great. So do you have any particular questions in terms of scrubbing or EPM? My experience is all in the back end of it, so I can't help too much with the front desk and the entry process. Though, that's usually where our problems start. That's why I always go back to the real key is eligibility and scanning the eligibility in. Or a lot of people don't realize there's a built-in PDF printer in Windows. So if you have on the screen the eligibility information, you can simply print to an PDF and then import it into the document section on the front end. And then if you have a problem with the claim, you have something to refer back to. I mean, I'd probably fix 90% of the policy numbers coming back unknown policy number myself by simply looking at that eligibility information and fixing a typo. So, always something I recommend. Oh, and we got somebody else joined us as well. Feel free to say hello, and if you think about it, would appreciate clicking the subscribe. And feel free to introduce yourself. Gotcha. Yeah, so that's kind of my approach of it is, all right, so yeah, if you're not using TriZetto for the electronic, then, I assume you're doing it all off to paper. And again, different approaches to that. So as I go through each claim, I'm marking them ready to bill, and I'm actually printing the HCFA right then and there, so it moves to the billed status. But that's just my approach on doing it, because I have a printer handy, and it's a simple way of doing things. Printing en masse, just make sure they're all marked ready to bill, and I just go claim by claim for yesterday's business and make sure they're all ready to go. And feel free, whoever it is that joined us, to introduce yourself. Let us know your experience with EPM, and obviously any questions you may have. Yeah. I agree. I hate paper too. It's a little hard to deal with, but one of the trade-offs too is I find there's some challenges in doing electronic. So it seems like electronic you'd never have a lost claim, and the reality is it's not true at all. The claims get lost electronically. When they do, it's often in groups, so you lose a whole batch at a time, and the electronic remittances get lost coming back. So again, everything has its trade-offs. Now, I don't know if you're dealing with a lot of routine vision carriers, like Specteras and Premier and some of these others, and some of those really your only option is to go to paper. I have not had good luck, for example, with Trizetto and Davis getting it to work, and I've heard other people's experiences similar. But the connection with Spectera, Premier, the Medicare, you have to go electronic really. Those seem to work just fine through the Trizetto. Do you have plans to go and hook up electronically with them? Because depending on your volume, it is nice. Okay. So if you're in network with VSP, I assume you're doing VSP electronically through the Eyefinity. If not, I would definitely get hooked up for that. I think that's a real winner. IMED, I don't know. The Trizetto is a little on the expensive side, so you have to weigh out the benefits of paper in doing that. It just happens my situation, most of the practices I'm dealing with are out of network for VSP, so we send all VSP claims on paper. And I mean, it's been very reliable and they pay pretty quickly. Okay, good. Now, the only one they integrate with is Trizetto as far as the clearinghouse, but I will tell you the big win for you is not sending the claims electronically as much as it's getting the remittance electronically. That is really nice. It makes posting so much easier, and usually when you have electronic remittance, you get set up for electronic fund transfer, so then you know you got the money. Okay, yeah, and with a lot of medical as well, it's very helpful. Now, are you looking at other things in terms of scrubbing with medical claims that I haven't kind of listed here? I mean, it may be necessary to get down to procedure specific. Good example are the doctors coding for, say, punctal plugs? Or is the system doing it for them? Or does it fall to you to make sure the modifiers are right? And that's probably a whole session we could do is on the medical and modifiers and denials, because that can be a nightmare, I know. Yeah, and that's why I end up doing a lot of the scrubbing, because, you know, not default Eyefinity necessarily. I think, you know, a lot of practice management systems are challenged in getting the right codes and the right mods per carrier. Yeah, definitely. And, you know, I mean, you well know, especially if you're physically in the practice, I mean, it's booking. They're trying to move patients through and go as quickly as they can, and the details tend to slide by. So if you can catch them before the claim exits, you know, that's just fantastic. The biggest thing, I think, is documentation. So I have a list per carrier of what I need to check, and things like how long is the policy number, the authorization. If we do a fundus, do they like a fundus code like a 92250, or do they want an S code instead? You know, and it's going to be the same on a lot of different procedures. I'm also finding some limitations. We have a couple carriers who insist on PQRS codes, and if those are not entered in the front end, then you can't enter them in the back end. And while I'm thinking about it, I'm going to write a note for myself about that 7-second lag. That's just kind of crazy. Specifically, which codes? If you remember them offhand. I like that. A lot of times what runs into a problem is if you're billing a EM code along with, say, this OCT, that as far as they're concerned, you shouldn't be putting the two of them together, and you need to throw like a 25 modifier on to get it to go through. All right, I'll look around and see if I can pick up something as to why it would deny. I'll take a look, because I've actually got a client who's working with Aetna and Anthem and does a fair amount of medical. I don't recall seeing OCT come by. Okay. Now, are you billing it with any modifiers, such as a 50, RT, LT? Are you separating it out into component? So that would be like what, the TC and 26 modifiers, I think, off the top of my head. Ah, okay. So that could have something to do with the denial, is if it's not linked to something they feel an OCT is appropriate for. Yeah, exactly. I mean, if we can get it to go through the carrier, all the much better. Have you actually tried talking to Aetna? I know that's always a painful process, to see if they'll give you anything useful. Yeah, and I'm just watching the lag myself too. So I jotted my email up there, Scarlett. So feel free to drop an email to me, and if I find anything useful to send back to you, I'll definitely do so. Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's pretty painful trying to talk to a carrier. And often it's not that they, I think, don't want to help. They don't want to commit to telling you this will work, and then turn out they're wrong, or they're kind of feeding you how to work around the system, when really what they want you to do is report honestly what happened, and then either it's acceptable for payment or it's not. So yeah, I'm with you on that. And by the way, on the lag thing, I have a YouTube up under my personal account, and so the video itself has the lag. Yeah. Some of the carriers are just insane to get anybody. But sometimes if you get a good person and they'll give you a contact, then you can get back to them. Yeah, exactly. So sometimes you have to try different approaches until you find one that hits. I'll look back through and see if I find any examples of a paid OCT code. And if I do, I will definitely let you know. So as I said, I've got the email up there. Feel free to drop me an email, and I'll get back to you if I find anything. All right, and Scarlett, unless you have any last questions or thoughts, I'm going to go ahead and let you go. And hey, I really appreciate you coming in, keeping me company here. And whoever our other lurker is, thanks for coming to visit. And if you think about it, I'd appreciate the subscribe deal. All right, perfect. All right, then I'm going to close off, and my mission for the next thing that I do is to figure out the 7-second lag. Maybe I can get it down to 3 seconds. That will be my goal. All right. YouTube, thank you so much. You guys have a